Hi, everyone. I'm Juliette Brody. I'm the faculty director of Stanford's Haas Center for Public Service. And my role here is a very brief one. It's just to welcome you all to the 2025 Mimi and Peter E. Haas Distinguished Visitor Lecture titled Innovation for All, Empowering Communities Through Tech. As we always do, I want to start with our land acknowledgement. Let's take a moment to reflect that Stanford sits on the ancestral land of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people. Consistent with our values of community and inclusion, we have a responsibility to acknowledge, honor, and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. With that, let's begin. I want to give a special welcome to the members of the Haas Center's National Advisory Board who are here with us. We are so grateful for their leadership and partnership as we do the important work of supporting students, faculty, and staff in their community-engaged work toward a more just and sustainable world. Thank you also to the Haas staff who worked so hard to organize this event, too many to name, but two in particular I will name, Katie Avila and Jordan Denon. So thank you so much. And a special thank you, of course, to Mimi Haas for her leadership on that National Advisory Board and for the foundational support of the Mimi and Peter E. Haas Distinguished Visitor Program. So the program brings to campus prominent individuals whose lives and careers have had a significant public impact and who have distinguished themselves in one or more forms of public service. Previous visitors, whom I hope you have taken the time to meet in this event in prior years, have included physicians, educators, journalists, organizers, artists, and politicians. Once again, this year, we are combining the Distinguished Visitor Program with the Social Entrepreneurs in Residence Program to bring to campus not one, but a cohort of 4 leaders in their field. This year's leaders, as you know, are leaders in the field of public interest technology, a subject of vital concern to us all, not only in this moment in history, but also in this place that was the birthplace of so much of the tech that is at play. In addition to being with us for this panel discussion tonight, the visitors are also spending this week and did a previous week in February, meeting with students and faculty in myriad settings to share their insights and counsel. And in the spring quarter, they will be co-teaching a course called Challenging the Status Quo, Social Entrepreneurs Advancing Democracy, Development, and Justice with Kathleen Kelly-Janis, who's here. And thank you, Kathleen, as always, for your partnership. Our panelists tonight are all local and all dedicated to harnessing technology to improve lives, empower communities, and transform systems for the common good. To introduce our panel, we have Jay Bornstein, who has taught computer science at Stanford for more than 16 years with a focus on virtual reality, software engineering, and entrepreneurship. Jay has been an extraordinary leader in making community-engaged work available to a little community you might have heard of, the Stanford Computer Science Department and community. Jay's leadership in this domain could not be more important because we know how many Stanford students are interested in computer science, and he helps them to bring that work into a community-engaged mode. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Jay, for introducing our panelists. I'll turn it over to you.
Hello there. Hope you're all doing well. Good evening. I'm Jay, senior lecturer in the computer science department, where, among other things, I teach a capstone course where student teams engage with corporate or community partners. And that's how I've had the good fortune to rub elbows with the Haas Center, and really grateful to be with you all tonight and with our distinguished panel. So on behalf of the university, I welcome you to the 2025 Mimi and Peter Haas Distinguished Visitor Lecture. When founding the university, Jane Stanford, she expressed her hope that Stanford would prepare students not only for personal success and direct usefulness in life, but also to become of greater service to the public. That vision lives on through Cardinal Service. It's a university-wide initiative advancing principled public service. Administered by the Haas Center, Cardinal Service connects students with opportunities to serve communities locally, nationally, and as I might talk about a little bit, globally through community-engaged courses, research, and internships. These programs, they help students develop knowledge and skills to tackle community concerns, along with a sense of civic responsibility. So this is an area I care deeply about, having supported the founding of CS Plus Social Good in our computer science department and having worked with hundreds of thousands of CS high school and junior high school students in underserved communities in this country with support from corporations like Meta and Google. Now, a brief example from my background and how Haas has supported really important work and enabled work in the CS department. There is what's called an upcycling initiative in Brazil. Our moderator, Chloe, actually participated in a project related to this last year, so maybe you'll hear more about it. But rather than putting fabric waste, 7 tons of it from a hospital into a landfill, it is upcycled. It is sent to NGOs where there are facilities such as sewing machines and places to store the fabric, and what are called seamstresses in Brazil come to these NGOs, use the facility, take those fabrics and turn them into tote bags, stuffed animals, things that then can be purchased by the hospital using the money that they didn't spend on putting the fabric in the landfill and given to patients or employees as reward. So it's a very virtuous cycle, and it creates some opportunities for primarily women in these underserved communities in Brazil. And so this year, thanks to the Haas Center's support, we are building a mobile application because the seamstresses do all have mobile phones. That's a reality these days, that empower them in terms of making their schedules, having transparency into the type of money they might make on different goods they could manufacture, access to training and certifications. And so our students will be in Brazil and engaging with these students or with these seamstresses directly. So without the Haas Center, that type of experience doesn't happen for our students. And I can say firsthand that it's not just the students who are engaged in that project, it's the whole class that sees that they can apply their knowledge, their skills, their talents, and have really significant impacts like this, creating socioeconomic pathways. So that's an example of the Haas Center's great work, and super grateful for everything that you do. Okay, on to the main event here. The Distinguished Visitors Program, it's a key part of the Cardinal Service effort, bringing public leaders to campus to share insights and engage directly with the students. These visits expose students to diverse perspectives, as you're going to hear tonight, and real-world experiences, deepening their understanding of how public service can address challenges that our society faces. And we're about to hear from our 4 distinguished visitors, 4 leaders in local organizations who develop technology for the public good. They'll be in residence at the Haas Center during the winter and spring quarters, and will meet with staff, faculty, and students. During the spring quarter, they're going to co-teach, as was mentioned, the course Challenging the Status Quo, Social Entrepreneurs Advancing Democracy, Development, and Justice with lecturer Kathleen Kelly-Janis. Super exciting opportunity for the students. This course is going to give students an opportunity to work on a hands-on service learning project to support the work of our visiting leaders. Public interest technology, also known as PIT, addresses some of the most pressing issues that society faces, from expanding access to essential services to strengthening community well-being. And Stanford has a responsibility to apply its resources and expertise to develop technologies that serve the public good and improve lives. And we hope that the example of these local entrepreneurs and public interest technology leaders will inspire and equip our students at Stanford and the Stanford community at large to develop innovative solutions to these societal issues. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists, starting with Alex Bernadotte. She is the founder and CEO of Beyond 12, a nonprofit that combines personalized coaching with mobile technology to help traditionally underserved students graduate from college and achieve meaningful careers. A graduate of Dartmouth College and Stanford University, Alex has received multiple awards recognizing her leadership and contributions to education, social justice. Welcome, Alex. Next, we have Jaime-Alexis Fowler, and she's the founder and executive director of Empower Work, a nonprofit that has supported over 400,000 workers with resources to navigate workplace challenges and improve their economic and emotional well-being. Jaime-Alexis's work leverages technology and human connection to create effective support systems and drive systemic change for workers nationwide. Welcome, Jaime-Alexis. Next, we have Josh Nesbit, is the technologist in residence at Emerson Collective, a company that invests in civic-minded entrepreneurs and innovators. Previously, he co-founded and served as CEO of Medic, leading the creation of open source software that now empowers over 160,000 frontline health workers worldwide. Josh is currently preparing to launch a new project focused on pro-social AI, technology that helps people help people. Welcome, Josh. And fourth, we have Amanda Renteria, who's the CEO of Code for America, and also a former soccer player, I learned. A nonprofit that partners with governments and community organizations to leverage technology for more equitable, accessible, and efficient government. Amanda has also served as Chief of Operations at the U.S. Department of Justice, National Political Director for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, and the first Latina Chief of Staff in the U.S. Senate. Welcome, Amanda. It's softball, not soccer.
Softball, there you go.
And finally, I'm super excited to introduce our moderator tonight, a student from last year, Chloe Trujillo. Chloe is a co-terminal student studying computer science at Stanford. She is also an issue area coordinator in public interest technology through the Haas Center, helping to organize events and service projects and assisting student groups with funding and connections to community organizations. Welcome, Chloe. All right, time for me to get out of the way and turn it over to the panel. We're really thrilled to have you all here and look forward to the conversation this evening. Have fun.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. It's such an honor to be the moderator for such an impressive panel and also for such an engaged audience. As the title of the lecture suggests, we were brought together because we have a shared interest in using technology for social impact. But, you know, I've always loved technology because I see it as like a means to an end. And the impact is just so broad. You know, you can use it for government services in America, to uplifting underserved communities and education. And so I think that's kind of a preface to how broad our conversation is going to be today. And we're all in for a very exciting one. So I'm just very grateful to be sharing the stage with you all. And with that, I would love to know more about like the experiences and opportunities that have shaped where you are today and just, you know, why are you sitting here?
Starting with me. Hello. Hi, everyone. Why am I sitting here? I'm sitting here because this work is very personal to me. I was one of the students that I am currently honored to serve. I was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I grew up in inner city Boston. I was raised by my late beloved grandmother and by my parents, who stressed the importance of an education and a college degree in particular as key to moving our family to better circumstances. But they hadn't had a college degree. And so college was this abstract thing that we talked about. We didn't really know what it took to get there. Until one day, my mom overheard a group of doctors talking about where they were sending their kids to college. So she came running home one day and said, I got it. You have to go to this thing called an Ivy League, and you have to go to this place called Dartmouth. And that's how the dream of a specific college was born. It was through this overheard conversation in the emergency room of Carnegie Hospital in Dorchester, Massachusetts, where my mom worked as a phlebotomist. And so coincidentally, I did land at that Dartmouth place, obviously realized it was pronounced differently when I got there, but had a very difficult transition from high school to college, even though on paper I should have done well. I struggled academically, financially, socially, and quickly discovered that getting in was actually the easiest part of the journey. And were it not for the support of my family, some mentors on campus who looked at me and said, not on my watch, you are going to do this, and an amazing group of peers, I likely would not be sitting here in front of you today as a Dartmouth grad, and then I had the honor of going to Stanford for graduate school as well. And so I am here today, Chloe, and I do this work to ensure that students with backgrounds and stories similar to mine have the support, the opportunities, and the networks to earn high-quality credentials and degrees that allow them to translate into meaningful careers and choice-filled lives in the way that I was able to translate my degree into a choice-filled life, and certainly work that I love doing.
It's a hard act to follow. Mine is also deeply personal. Very early in my career, so I'm Jaime-Alexis, and very early in my career, I had a real gut punch moment where, having graduated from college, having had this set of resources at my disposal to start my career, I thought, okay, it's going to go this certain path, and it didn't. And I lost a job that was tied to my education and my future, and I really didn't have anywhere to turn around that. And I made it through, but it took a huge lift and a lot of effort and a huge setback, financially and emotionally, to get a job at all and to find that next job, and to have support. And so from that point, I made it sort of a personal mission that I was always going to make sure that folks didn't run into challenges that I had faced. And so as I moved through into leadership positions and management positions, I always made sure that we were structuring work in ways that worked for people and the organizations that I was part of. And I realized that that wasn't getting at some of the systemic inequities that existed. And so just, paying it forward by providing supportive practices wasn't enough to change the overall structure. And so a couple of years ago, I guess now a little bit longer than that, in 2017, I had a late night conversation with someone who was really struggling. And at the end of the conversation, I thought, oh my gosh, I wish there was something I could refer her to. Like, I had this great conversation. I think things are a little bit better, but I wish there was something that was accessible, that was like real time, that had information and tools that I didn't feel equipped to provide in her situation. And so I started looking around to see if it existed, and it didn't. So why am I here? I never thought I was going to be a social entrepreneur. I think only knew what that term was a few years ago. But I saw a problem that I had personally experienced and that I saw a huge market gap around. And when you look at then what the driver of our current structure ends up being, that you look at where this inequity is, it's driven by the fact that there are folks who have access to resources in employment and folks who don't. And there are 40 million Americans who have nowhere to turn when their livelihood is under threat. And so that's what we created with Empower Work, and leverage technology to meet people where they are, to listen deeply to the pain points and challenges and situations that are coming up, and think about how can we be there as a tool, as a resource, and as a deeply human avenue to change lives for going forward. So honored to be here and be part of this conversation.
Amazing. Hi, I'm Josh, and I want to share why I'm here talking about public interest technology, why I think I'm here. I think I was predisposed in 3 specific ways, and I think I have compulsive tendencies. So the 3 ways I think I was predisposed. First, my parents at some point sat me down, and there was a map involved, and they said, draw a circle around all the people you care about. And it was a philosophical exercise, turns out. And I imagined drawing a circle and leaving some people outside of that circle, and it broke my brain and heart. There was no way I could do it. So I think first step was global by default. It was like a default mode. The second was my mom was a physical therapist, and very early on taught me that she worked with students with special and specific skills and abilities. She taught me that disability was not an individual attribute, but a societal attribute. And that was so early for me. And so that was a default, led me to a default systematic worldview, structures and systems. And then I thought I was going to follow a family story of providing healthcare as your role in society. I thought I was at Stanford to go to med school and be a doctor. And then I was doing qualitative research in Malawi and started meeting community health workers who were so bravely every single day caring for their neighbors. And it blew me away. It was just, I was surrounded by caring people. There was so much care happening. Who was I to go on a journey to train to be a provider in that context? And so I think it was around the time that cell towers were going up around the world, and in a very techno-optimist moment, we said, we have this new infrastructure, what are we going to do with it? And we figured, really, we must apply it with and for folks caring in this really heroic way. So the third disposition I think I want to share is that tech was part of the toolkit by default for me growing up. It just was, of course it should be in humanities toolkit. So those are my dispositions. And then I was at Stanford with support from the Haas Center. I was in a moment where I could not start Medic. There was no one here or otherwise who was going to stop that from happening. But Stanford instead chose to support that strange public service entrepreneurship path. So I'm really grateful for it.
I love all of Josh's defaults because I didn't have those. Like my default, and partly why I'm here is because where I grew up is the Central Valley of California, and it wasn't normal for kids like me from the Central Valley to come to Stanford. I was the first woman, first Latina to go to Stanford, and I wasn't sure I was going to go, even though it was over the intercom in high school that I'd gotten in and everyone was excited. But it was a teacher who said, you need to go because people from here need to know that they can succeed at a place like that. And that really stuck with me. But fast forward, I get through Stanford, I go to Goldman, and I'm there for about 3.5 years, and it's exciting, and I was good at the job, and I really liked capital markets and all that, all that came with being in the financial markets. But I had gone home and gone to a basketball game with my mom, and she talks to her friend sitting next to her, her comadre, and she whispers over and she's like, "What's your daughter doing now?" And my mom says, "Well, she's at a bank teller." And it wasn't the words she said, but it was kind of how she said it. I was supposed to do something with going to Stanford. I was supposed to do something for the community when I left that little town. And it really did make me think when I was on my drive from the Central Valley back to LA, what am I supposed to do in the world? What was I supposed to do when I left? And ever since then, I ended up moving back to my hometown, and my first job as a public servant was a teacher back in my old high school. And I haven't stopped being a public servant ever since. So that's how I ended up here.
Well, thank you for being a role model to students like myself who are also women and Latina. I was wondering, so you guys spoke a little bit about the circumstances that motivated you to start your careers in the trajectory that they are now. What issues do you see now with your experience and your wisdom that people should know about? And maybe what types of issues do you think that we students should be focusing on today? I guess maybe we'll go in reverse order.
I think we have this plan.
We have an order.
Josh.
Just starting this one.
You're gonna love this one, actually.
I mean, maybe just to level set a little bit.
Yeah.
I really love the question. To level set a little bit, I feel like I've been living in an alternate universe over 15 years after graduating from Stanford, and I'm really grateful for it. And I just want to speak to it that I think there's no illusion. Most people's experience of technology has been of extensions of pretty extractive things, and I think that it's just sort of how things have scaled up or rolled out. And the thing that has emerged from that is that we are quite separated and polarized and all the things that we've really we've felt and know. And I really know that it could be different because we've been experiencing it. It's really amazing to come together with this cohort because we know that technology built in different ways, deployed in different contexts with different aims can be different. I'm looking at friends who've seen dozens of these peers. We really know that we can create with purpose and with public interest. It is not easy, but we know it's possible. So I just wanted to level set to say that we're not naive, but we remain very hopeful.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, I think there's certainly the current moment that we're all in where we're seeing tech used in a very harmful way, in a variety of ways. And I think that's been true, especially in the realm of workers, where you're thinking about technology used for surveillance or, to track hours or to like push efficiency, or certainly thinking about how AI is going to impact and disrupt job markets in wholesale ways. And I think where we're situated in terms of thinking about technology with Empower Work is how does it open up doors? How does it create access? How do you leverage technology? Chloe, I liked when you said as a means to an end. If the end is what we're building towards, and the technology is used in service of a greater structure, then we're using technology in ways that meet human needs, that are human-centered, that are really based in what the pain points are. Like when I was first starting Empower Work, people would ask me like, well, why is it text-based? Like, why don't you build an app? And it was like, well, because people want confidential, they want something that's confidential. They want something that meets them where they are. They don't want to download something. Sometimes it's time sensitive. And mostly they can do it on the fly. Like we have people who, are giving their grandkids a bath and they're texting about the fact that they might lose their job. And it's so urgent for them that they need to be doing that while they're, handling bath time at the same time. And they can do that. And that's like technology in service of like meeting someone where they are. But it's not sophisticated technology. It's the technology that meets the need for where they are. In the back end, we have a lot of sophisticated things, but the user experience is what they need. And I think we've come a little bit further afield from that maybe in the current moment, and we have an opportunity to move in a different direction.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and we've been having this conversation without acknowledging the moment that we're in. And I'm just going to tell you, I work in higher education, and it is a scary moment, right? And so we're seeing a deliberate, strategic, well-funded, well-coordinated attack on higher education, I think for me on two fronts. Front number one is as an engine of social and economic mobility for certain students. And the message that we're sending those students is that we are done with you. You've had enough, right? And we are going to walk back the protections and the pathways that we have created for you. And we are seeking to end that, right? And so there's that higher education attack. We all know about the Supreme Court decision that banned race-conscious admissions, right? Almost 2 years ago now, which while it felt like it was very narrow and the purview was about admissions, it's been used as the launching pad for lots of other decisions around limiting opportunity, limiting access, I think, to economic mobility, right? And so on the one hand. And on the other hand, we're seeing the attack on higher education, education more broadly, because it can often be a pathway to democratic, right, sort of like inclusion and activism. And so I don't think anything that we're seeing right now is an accident, right? I think it is very deliberate and, very specifically in terms of our work. So we are, have about 85,000 students on our platform. We are a coaching platform. We are collecting a lot of sensitive information about students. And the real question from some of our students right now is, do I complete the FAFSA, which is the federal financial aid application? Because I am from a mixed status family, and I don't know how that information is going to be used to target my family, right? And so students are having to make real decisions. Do I further my education? Because we have talked about education being a pathway to lifting you and your family to better circumstances, but will I harm my family by completing this information? And what do we do as stewards of the data that is entrusted to us as we think about the way that public interest technology is helping or harming, right? Like our constituents. And so we are in a real moment. And yes, I am an optimist. Technology has been part of our toolkit for quite some time. But we are in a real moment now as we were thinking about who are the actors, to what end, privacy, security, and data, and how do we help continue to build trust and to have our communities continue to trust us as we are building these tools that we know can help, but that might have an impact, right? Unintended consequences or very intended consequences on their livelihood and on their families and on their communities.
So I too, my answer to this is also very much in the context we're living in today. Code for America works with governments really partnering to make access easier, particularly low-income programs like earned income tax credit, like social safety net, like expungement of records. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about like what moment are we in at this very time, and what is, it's going to end hopeful, I think. But
We're getting there.
We're going to get there.
We're going to get there.
But what moment we're in is I think about like the height of the railroad system, right, in the like 1916, where you could see the tracks being laid everywhere. And if you imagine all of a sudden someone making decisions on what's going to be dismantled or where am I going to change this train or that track to certain communities and leaving out other communities, what we are seeing on the back end of tech infrastructure is exactly that, but people can't see it. And so what we at Code for America wake up every day, because we've been in these systems, working both at the federal level and at the state level, is worried about how those tracks are changing. And some of them are being torn out, and we are going to have to completely rebuild them again. But what makes me hopeful is what we also see at Code for America is states and local governments are doing some incredible work out there. I mean, what you're seeing in San Francisco trying to really bring applications to housing, both with CBOs and the local government, to figure out how do you streamline that and make it easier and faster. We're also working with LA County right now to how do you increase and speed up the permit process through technology so that people can get their permits faster. And we're seeing places like states like Maryland, who is combining 5 of their applications into one uptake process so that folks who are in poor communities, it takes, instead of 20 hours, 20 minutes. And so that still exists, just maybe not at the levels we thought. And maybe scale isn't the thing we should be pushing social impact organizations to do right now, but instead getting back to communities on the ground who know the people best. And if we can utilize our technology for good there, we're then going to build it up and then maybe get back to scale again and build the railroads in the way that we'd like them to see them today.
I really appreciate your metaphor of the railroads. And I think that like all 4 of you are doing work where you are empowering people who have the tools to build these tracks and putting them in front of the people who actually need it the most. And so I guess I would love to hear a little bit about like the existing tracks that you see in each of your own domains and how you're working around these existing structures and systems, and also changing actors, like you mentioned, Alex, to impart the change that you really want to see. Maybe Josh, would you like to start again?
Sure, yes. So I've heard it said that in the face of violent structures, we have a few options, and maybe there are lots of others, and maybe I would love to hear from you all if this is incomplete, but I've heard it said that we can resist, we can tame, we can smash, or we can build. And we kind of have different strategies, different tactics, different roles. I know I have to build. I know I'm a builder. I build with others. And I think actually we have a lot to learn from world building and science fiction writers. What has to like be created with other people such that you believe that it's a world. It's like it's coherent. So I actually don't think I'm going to be in the current structures very much right now. I think in the history of marronage or like digital marronage, we're going to be in like what might be said as uninhabitable spaces.
Can you explain that a little bit?
The basic idea being that, and it's like mostly extremely marginalized folks who have, in the face of structures, said, we're going to go to swamplands, we're going to go to uninhabitable places, we're going to recreate society there and strategize, and then everyone will join us and we'll be free. So there is a deep, like recurring history, repeated history there that I think we can learn a lot from. And maybe it's mostly digital, but I just think we have to be building right now. And I think care is the revolutionary force that I'm so eager to tap into, that I feel like so missing. I think care is a politics in and of itself, and it's not for a party, it's for people. And I just think that a politics of care, a world building focused on care, that is where I'm gonna be living and creating with folks.
Okay. Anybody have something to add?
Do you want me to go? I love that, and you'll see that we laugh when Josh speaks because there are some Joshisms, that will come out.
We're creating a marinage.
Yes, we are. Exactly.
That's what we laugh. You're like, oh, we're doing that.
Yes, we're doing. That was his word today. I love that framework because I too am a builder, right? And we are operating within a system, right? Like we have built an organization that is partnering with institutions of higher ed. Like that's our model. And so we are operating within a system. What we do is that we built a digital coaching platform that combines human coaches who work with students virtually while they're in college, a campus customized mobile app that uses evidence-based nudges to remind students of key activities and deadlines, and then a back-end analytics engine that's powered by machine learning that allows us to predict which students need help and when, and then prescribe the right type of support. We are on a mission to scale. And so we did build a Gen AI coach, that allows us now to take 14 years worth of student-coach interaction data and build a conversational interactional coach that allows us to offload some of the navigational transactional questions that our coaches have answered historically, so that we can reserve our humans for what is uniquely human, right? Like that is the journey that we're on, but we're also on a journey to fundamentally change higher education so that it is more accessible, affordable, equitable, and relevant. And we're going to continue to do that work. That work is incredibly difficult now. Institutions of higher ed are scared. Higher education are scared and are thinking about what their strategies. And I think a lot of other folks are going to have to step up to support our institutions, our democratic institutions, but we have chosen to continue to work with the system and to try to navigate as best as we can the current climate, but also to continue to build. Because I do believe, and we have to be hopeful, that there is another side to this, right? And that we are going to continue to do this work. But we have chosen to continue to work within the system and to use technology to help us amplify humans and human, not just efficiency, I think human genius, to be able to help us do this work. And we are going to continue to do that, right, as builders. But I also believe that we have to train our students, right, to also operate in those other lanes that you're talking about.
Yeah. I think I feel so strongly that we have so much build momentum in the conversations that we've had. We could talk about building all day long. I think in this current moment, there's a lot of, Empower Work was premised on the fact that work was not working for people before this current moment. And so it was really clear when I started Empower Work, there are 40 million Americans who don't have resources or access to care. It's grown. It was 40 million in 2018 when I started Empower Work. It was 60 million. We've gone through COVID. We've gone through aspects of the recession. And the thing that I'm thinking about a lot with our team and thinking about this current moment is Empower Work has always been creating something that didn't exist. When I would tell people, oh, we're creating this resource for people, and they're like, oh, so you sell to employers. Well, no, because people don't trust what comes from employers. We're structured as a nonprofit because we want to be situated outside. They shouldn't have to go to their employer to solve the source of their pain point around employment. The fundamental structure of how we've thought about resources and support for workplaces has been broken for a really long time. And so we've been operating in a model of there is the existing system, but we're a puzzle piece that's a little bit outside of where it is. Well, now that larger landscape, that larger puzzle is fundamentally shifting in a lot of ways. When COVID happened in 2020, we had 197% increase in conversation volume in March of 2020. And we were able to quickly use technology, and there were, actions mobilizing in so many different fronts to respond to that moment. And across 2020 and 2021, we were able to mobilize resources, get people connected to unemployment who thought that they weren't eligible for unemployment. And that is not going to happen this time. And so I'm thinking about, is that 60 million going to become what's that number on the other side? And there's not going to be a government structure of resources and support, and there's likely not going to be any employer either. So I think that the positive piece of that is, what are we building? We now have a moment to really think about, what does that structure look like on the other side? And that's my bit of optimism, but I also think it's going to be really hard and tough, and the systems are going to need a lot of work.
So I think of two things. One is try and get out of the binary. And so if you just think about Doge and it's about efficiency, a lot of the work we do is effective, and it happens to be efficient. And so really trying to send that message that not everything needs to be yes or no or black or white or Republican or Democrat, that how do we start to build that middle, where it's the nuance, where it's the plus, not an or. And so just like with direct file, we partner with the government to do filing for taxes free and easy, particularly for folks who can qualify for EITC. And guess what? It is more efficient in the way that we do it, but it's also more effective for those who are actually receiving those benefits. The second thing is really around narrative and storytelling. So government doesn't generally have an outreach arm. They don't have a marketing team. And what we're trying to think about, and in fact our student project is about this, is how do we start to talk about what government does in terms of why that matters to us as a society, why it matters to care, why it's actually foundational to innovation. And so a lot of what we're doing is that storytelling. And I think about the fact that it was Reagan who said the 9 most terrifying words are, I'm the government, I'm here to help you. And that's actually worked. And now actually people think government is here to hurt you, and in some cases maybe the way it's running it does. But what we can help in trying to rebuild not only the narrative, but actually the work, is to get back to a time where government is supposed to be about caring for you again. And so that's a lot of the work that we're going to be doing, and something that we're really focused on, is how do we tell this story of not only government, but government innovation that's really about caring for people.
Yeah, so you guys have used a lot of really inspiring words: hope, care, trust. And before we open it up to questions, I was wondering if you could leave us on a more positive note. I know we've been talking a lot about the fear. No, of course. I know, but I'm sure we're all aware of the changing circumstances that especially our country is going through right now. And I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of fear and anxiety in this moment. And I really just want to hone in on this hope and this, this motivation that I think we're all feeling right now. So if any of you guys have any final words with respect to that.
Let's start with my colleague on the end.
Me?
Yeah.
All right. So I think about, I'm going to go back to just a story. I think about March 10th, 1968, when I asked my parents if they knew they were standing in a moment of history. They happened to be in the fields of Delano when Cesar Chavez broke the fast with Robert Kennedy. And it really was this moment that changed farm workers' rights for generations to come, right? I ended up being able to go to the dentist because my mom had healthcare in her job. I was able to go to school because kids were no longer allowed to work in the fields. And what Kennedy said that day to the 4,000 farm workers like my parents who were in the fields was, as you think about history, you're going to be able to tell your grandchildren and children when they go to high school and college and get good pay for good jobs, that you were there, that you did this, that you were there at that moment of difficulty and danger. And I think about that hope isn't told, the stories of hope in history aren't told when everything is working and assured. They're actually on the front lines in the moment when somebody can still see the possible, when it's super hard to see, when you're standing in difficulty and danger. And so what gives me hope, and at the same time recognizes that we're a little bit in the difficulty and danger right now, but the stories that we need to tell are those on the front lines who can see the possible even now. And so I'm hopeful, but in sort of standing in difficulty and danger.
Yeah. Thank you. I think there must be something adaptive about the loop between anxiety and worry. There's something that served us at some point, or it also wouldn't show up as much as it does. But I think there are more adaptive loops. And I forget what book I read, but they said you have to offer yourself a bigger, better offer than worry. And the go-to bigger, better offer than worry is curiosity. And I really turn to this. So getting off of the anxiety worry loop into the curiosity action loop is what I really obsess about. So for me, I'm so curious. How might I reconnect with my neighbor across the street? How might they come to know that I care about them and their kids? What are they dreaming about right now? Those things endlessly fascinate me. And I'm so curious how the role that technology might play in that. So we're going to try to find out, and we're going to find out through practice. Students are going to be involved. Community organizers are going to be involved. Technologists who want to do liberatory work are going to be involved. So we're going to form networks of people who help each other. We're going to call them pro-social clubs. Y'all can join. They launched last week. So we're going to practice. We're going to try things that keep us in that curiosity action loop.
I'm excited to be part of these clubs.
Right on, Chloe. Right on.
I think for me, it is the building that's giving a lot of hope, but I think there's also a piece of it that's about energy. And, I think this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And in the process of that building, in the process of imagining what's better, what do we want to think about on the other side, I come back to this. I was door knocking in the fall around the election with my kids, and we were outside of a house that wasn't on our list to door knock. And this guy was standing in his yard, and he didn't have any yard signs. Like, I didn't know where he was politically. And I was with my then 3-year-old. And he said to me, so do you think there's going to be a woman president tonight? And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how to answer that question. I was like, I hope so. And he was like, me too. And he starts talking about 1968. Actually, this is really interesting. He referenced his experiences, and he was like, I'm 87 years old, and I've seen a lot of things. And I get emotional about it. But he said in front of my 3-year-old, he said, this country has been really good to me, and I want it to be really good for everybody. And he walked through all the ways in which government had worked for him and why he was so excited about what was next. And I was so excited that my 3-year-old heard that. And amidst a lot of really hard moments that have happened in the last couple of months, I keep going back to that and thinking about how can I be at that point in my life at 87 going you know what, this community, this country has been really great for me, and I've helped make it better for other people too, and have people around me who have been part of that. And so I think we all have an opportunity to do that, and use technology along the way too. We'll be in it.
All right, I'm going to read something to you. Before I read it, though, in terms of hope for me, I said at the beginning I was raised by my late beloved grandmother. I had the privilege of having her for 105, she was around for 100 until she was 105. So it feels like a lot of the hope that I get comes from just her and ancestors, right? That I knew the stories of my ancestors. I know that they went through moments that were even more difficult than the moments that we have now. Oftentimes we talk about generational trauma, yes, but I also think that we have the generational blueprint for success as well. So that was passed down to us, and I feel it very palpably. But one of the things that my grandmother talked about a lot was just action, right? When she got hopeless and when things were hard, she was like, you must do. And there's this quote that I have just taped across my desk about hope that I just want to share because it does bring me a lot of solace every day and reminds me of my beloved grandmother, Mommy Claire. People speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spiders' webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of the cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. And so when I think of hope, I think of action, right, in this moment, and that we do not have the luxury to lay down. We don't have the luxury of hopelessness. And so I look at this panel, I get hope from all of you. Chloe, I get hope from you, right, and students on this campus. And so for me, this is just a call to action, a call to do what we know sorry y'all, to know what we must do in order to get to the other side, to have a just and equitable world where all of us can thrive. That's what hope is for me.
What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you for sharing that quote. There is like a lot of other there are resources on campus for you to connect with their work further. For example, if you're a student, you can enroll in the class Urban Studies 135, which these lovely panelists will be co-teaching, and it's called Challenging the Status Quo, Social Entrepreneurs Advancing Democracy, Development, and Justice. And if you are not a student, please go to our Haas Center website and connect with the Distinguished Visitors Program there so you can read more about their organizations and be more inspired about the work that they're doing. I know throughout this panel we've talked a lot about kind of the constructive cycle of affecting change, where it starts with getting people to understand the problems, to get them to care about the problems, and also see what problems people already are caring about. And then building this trust in both the existing systems and ourselves as change makers, and then translating this into tangible outputs that others can be inspired by. So please, I urge you to draw inspiration from these lovely panelists, and please join us downstairs for the reception so you can ask them more questions. Thank you so much for coming.